Sorry. So here is my presentation for this STEM meeting. So today I will present you a programming tool. I know that some of you are already using it, but as I know, most of you don't use it, and I think it's a time saver. So I would like to convince you to start using it. Okay, so what is GitHub Copilot? Basically, it's a programming tool that was developed by Microsoft and OpenAI. It uses AI to generate suggestions in the code within your IDE. So for instance, here on the right, you can see that I defined 2 points, P1 and P2. And after that, I wanted to have a function to compute the distance between those 2 points. And in the below image, you can see the suggestion from GitHub Copilot in gray. So basically, it gave me the code to compute this distance. And this is just a suggestion. So while you are using GitHub Copilot, you can choose either to press tab and accept the suggestion, or you can just ignore it. If I press tab, it accepts the suggestion and it writes it in the code. And actually, if you pass your mouse over the suggestion, sometimes there are several suggestions and you can choose between them. So as I said, this tool is based on AI. So it uses a modified version of GPT-3, which has been trained on GitHub public repositories. As I know, GitHub Copilot, like they are currently working on integrating GPT-4, but it's not released yet. So basically, GitHub Copilot is available on any programming language you can find on GitHub. So basically any programming language. However, it only works well with few programming languages, which includes Python and C++. And as I said, GitHub Copilot is directly integrated as a plugin within your IDE. So it is currently available with 4 different IDE. I personally use it with VS Code. From now on, I will present you the functionalities of GitHub Copilot. So I think the most important thing to understand is that GitHub Copilot takes the context into account. So it will take everything that is in the file that is currently open. So this includes variables, comments, or functions, and it will try to guess what to write next, depending on this. So in this example, you can see on the left, it's the same example as before. I defined 2 points as tuple, and it gave me the code to compute the distance between those 2 points. And on the right, I defined 2 points as dictionaries, and you can see that it automatically adapted the code to compute the distance. So yeah, anyway, the main point of this slide is that everything that you write on your file will be taken into account to make the suggestion. So in the previous example, I was starting to write a function and GitHub Copilot tried to complete it. But actually, you can also give some instructions to GitHub Copilot, which we call prompts. So basically, you just write some comments, you write what you want, and GitHub Copilot will try to suggest depending on what you wrote. So if you want something specific, I recommend you to use detailed prompts with everything you want, because for instance, if you just, in this example, I asked for a neural network and I defined its architecture. But of course, if you just say you want a neural network, then you don't know which suggestion it will make, because it cannot guess instead of you. Actually, here you can see that GitHub Copilot made a small mistake because I wanted to have 4 hidden layers of training neurons each, but actually it only gave me 3 hidden layers. I think this is because I forgot to write hidden in my prompt. So yeah, basically when you use GitHub Copilot, you will have to get used to it to understand how to make your prompts. You can also make your prompts in Korean. However, as I know, the performance are not as good as in English. So I recommend you to do your prompts in English. One of the things GitHub Copilot is really good at is for very cumbersome tasks, such as data formatting or repetitive tasks. So I'm pretty sure you can see the first image. I'm pretty sure this situation happened to you before. Like you have a list of numbers in the terminal and you want to copy it in Python and use it as an NP array. So, you know, it's a bit cumbersome. You have to write np.array. You have to add the parentheses, add the comma between each number. But here with GitHub Copilot, you just have to copy and paste from your terminal, and you don't have to do all the formatting by yourself. Also in the image below, you know, when you want to print something in C++, it's a little bit annoying. You have to write std, cout, and everything. Here, I just wrote a prompt saying print triangle, and it directly knew how to print it. So it's definitely a time saver. You can also use GitHub Copilot to write the documentation instead of you. I have a video for this. So here, actually, I'm not typing anything. I'm basically, GitHub Copilot is writing everything, and I'm just pressing tab and enter. And that's all I have to do. And as you can see, it writes the parameters, describe the functions, the return. So it's a time saver. However, of course, this tool is not perfect. As I said, it is trained on GitHub public repositories. So actually, the code might not be optimized. Sometimes it might be wrong. Sometimes the suggestion it gives may not even make any sense. Sometimes it may use some outdated functions. Right? For instance, it happened to me when I used it. I wanted to print something in Python, but for the print function, it used the Python 2 grammar. So of course it couldn't work because I was using Python 3. So you have to be aware of that. So in this example, you can see I defined a neural network and I wanted GitHub Copilot to write the forward function instead of me. So that's what it did. But actually, I was expecting GitHub Copilot to add some activation functions between my layers. Because of course, when you use a neural network, you usually want to have some activation functions. But here it didn't. So my point here is that it won't do the job or the job instead of you. You can just use it as an assistant, but you should always double check what it gives you. So after using it, I think I can give you some tips. So when you are not satisfied with the suggestions, you can add some comments or prompts to say what you want. So for instance, in the example I gave just before, you may write just before the forward function that you want to use the renew function for the activation function, and it may work. Also, GitHub Copilot works much better if you use meaningful names for your variables or for your functions. For instance, let's say you have an angle, then I recommend you to call it theta. because in that case, many people use theta as an angle name. So GitHub Copilot will probably guess that it's an angle and it will know how to use it. If you call your angle T, then, well, maybe it cannot guess that it's an angle and it will not give good suggestions. Another thing is, as I said, GitHub Copilot takes the context into account. So basically, it takes into account everything that you have in your current file, but it also takes into account the other files that are opened in your IDE. I think it's important to know because let's say you're working with Python and you import some functions from another file. If this file is not open in your IDE, then GitHub Copilot cannot use the functions in this file. However, if you open the other files in your IDE, then it will be able to do so. Okay, so at this point, you may think, okay, that's cool, but actually, ChatGPT can already do everything. And yeah, actually, that's kind of true, but I think the way we use it is slightly different. First of all, from my experience, the computation speed of GitHub Copilot is faster than ChatGPT. What I mean by computation speed is when you write something, GitHub Copilot most of the time give you the suggestion instantaneously, while for ChatGPT, it's a bit slow. This is actually only true if you use the free version of ChatGPT. Also, I think the main difference is the idea integration of GitHub Copilot. So as I said, GitHub Copilot is directly into your IDE. So it can read all your function and it can provide your suggestions directly inside your IDE. While for ChatGPT, there's no native integration into your IDE. There are actually some plugins that you can use within your IDE, but in that case, ChatGPT is still a chatbot, so it's a bit different. However, from my experience, the accuracy of ChatGPT is better than GitHub Copilot. What I mean by accuracy is that basically the code given by ChatGPT is usually better. It is more optimized and more relevant. However, yeah, I mean, I think, for instance, let's say you want to, you open a new file and you want to write a very big, very long functions, then I think you'd better use ChatGPT because GitHub Copilot won't really be able to do so. But if you already have many files with many functions, then GitHub Copilot will be much more useful. Okay, now I will explain you how to install it. First of all, usually you have to pay to use GitHub Copilot, but it's actually free for students and for teachers. And for the installation, well, it's not very complicated, but it takes some time because there are several steps. So you have to apply on GitHub Global Campus on GitHub Education. Then you have to apply to GitHub Copilot on your GitHub account on the GitHub website. And then you have to install the plugin into your IDE. Of course, this depends on your IDE. I will share those things in the group chat after this presentation. Okay, initially, I was supposed to end my presentation here. However, I noticed something interesting that I wanted to share with you. Basically, I wrote any queue and I was expecting GitHub Copilot to write any questions. However, as you can see, I got below suggestions. Any questions, ask me on Discord, and then it basically gave a Discord ID. Actually, I checked, and it turns out that this Discord ID is a real ID that belongs to someone. So that's why, for obvious reason, I hide it here. So anyway, my point here is that GitHub Copilot can disclose some private informations. And I know it's obvious, but I guess it's always better to repeat it. Do not share any sensitive data on any GitHub public repository. Thank you for your attention. Do you have any questions?